Freedom's the answer. What's the question? You're listening to Ernest Hancock.
No wrong, no right. I'm gonna tell you there's no black and no white. No blood, no stain. All we need is one worldwide vision. One flesh, one bone, one true religion.
Yeah, there's no right, there's no wrong. You know, we're going to tell you what's what. You know, we just need one worldwide religion. You know, it's all good as long as we're in charge. Oh, man, where have I heard this before? Now, I tell you, John Perkins, he has a perspective that we need to have shared with us all, and it's this. When things like Egypt happen, as they always do, and they're happening a lot in the Middle East right now. You got threats from Yemen and even Saudi Arabia, Qatar. Heck, you know, Iraq is sitting there demanding rebuild money from the U.S. for the stuff we broke. You got, you know, Syria, Jordan. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And then what role does Israel play in this? You kind of haven't been hearing a whole lot about it from them, have you? Now, when they do this, and there is a replacement in the government, the first thing is that, you know, we just got to get everybody back to work. Well, the military in Egypt has been trying to do that. Okay. You know, we took out Mubarak. Oh, and he's kind of, you know, he's not doing too well. He's in a coma. Heck, he might even already be dead. You know, you resign, hey, you're a liability then, man. All of a sudden you just wake up dead one day. So then you go, all right, we're going to, 6 months. We'll have a new government, pinky swear. How do they do that, John? How do they go through this mega? Who are we sending? I mean, wouldn't we be sending Mr. John Perkins in the 70s to there for exactly this reason at exactly this time?
Yeah, you know, you got a number of layers of people. Of course, you've got diplomats that go in and try to smooth talk everything. You've got economic hitmen like what I was that go in and try to essentially bribe people with what we call legal bribes. And then you've got the jackals who go in and if nothing else works, they assassinate leaders or overthrow governments. And of course, all these leaders know that the jackals are lurking there in the background. So, you know, it's pretty tempting to take the bribes or to give in because you know that if you don't, you're probably going to go anyway.
Yeah. So now what kind of deals are made? Who did you represent when you were in the Middle East doing these things? Who was your boss?
Well, it depended. You know, it was very different. Iran was very different from Saudi Arabia. In Iran, what we were trying to do was support the Shah, to do projects that would make him more popular and so that he could stay in power, and at the same time get huge amounts of money coming into U.S. corporations to build big projects in that country. So it was twofold. You use the Shah's own money, his oil money, to hire American companies to build mammoth projects there that you hoped would help keep the people under control. So they would want to keep the Shah in power. And at the same time, the jackals were there training the Savak and the secret police and others to make sure that if people were unhappy, that they wouldn't get too far with that subversives would be taken out one way or another or tortured. In Saudi Arabia, we had a very, very different situation. I was brought into Saudi Arabia in the early 70s because there was an oil embargo. Some of your listeners may remember it. You know, I grew up in New Hampshire, and I well remember all over New England the huge long oil lines of cars trying to get gas at filling stations because OPEC had refused to sell us oil. They were unhappy with our policies in Israel. And, of course, Saudi Arabia was the leader of OPEC. It had more oil than anyone else. So the Treasury Department came to me and other economic hitmen and said, listen, you can't allow this to happen again. We can't be blackmailed by Saudi Arabia or OPEC. So I went off to Saudi Arabia. I spent a lot of time there. I had a staff of guys who worked for me there. And we put together this deal. And, you know, the essence of the deal is that the Saudis agreed not to increase the price of oil by anything that the oil companies wasn't acceptable to oil companies. They agreed to return most of the money they made selling oil to the world, petrodollars, to the U.S., investing in U.S. Treasury securities, the interest from those securities, which has amounted to trillions of dollars, would be used by the U.S. Treasury Department to hire U.S. corporations to westernize Saudi Arabia, build petrochemical complexes, desalinization plants, in fact, huge cities out of the desert. And the Saudis would agree to only sell oil on the international market for dollars, which put the dollar in a very strong position. And, of course, everything the Saudis agreed to, OPEC agreed to. We, on the other hand, agreed to keep the House of Saud, the royal family, in power as long as they held this agreement. We then tried to, that was a very, very successful agreement from our standpoint, from the economic hitman standpoint. It changed the world. It changed world history.
Okay, so one of the other, well, please go ahead and continue. I have some questions, though, but go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we tried to do the same thing with Saddam Hussein in Iraq after that. It's the second largest oil country in the Middle East. And Saddam didn't bite. He wouldn't accept the deal. That's when we sent in the jackals. They couldn't take him out. His security was very good. He had lookalike doubles. It's hard to take out a man that you're not even sure who the real one is. And so the first Bush sent in the military. Thought he was sufficiently chastised when we destroyed his military that now he'd come around. Of course, he didn't. So the second Bush sent in the military again, took him out, and the rest is history. We basically destroyed that country as a result.
Yeah, but Herbert Walker Bush got Medal of Freedom from Obama for it.
Well, isn't that nice?
I know. Didn't that surprise you?
No. Why would it surprise me?
I know. I mean, nothing surprises me anymore. I mean, dang, man, it's so sad. Well, the question that I have is, we look at, things like Iran. They've been really kind of different in a lot of ways. One, they speak Farsi, not Arabic. They're Persian, not Arab. They're a whole different culture. They're very ancient. They got their own history and so on. And I kind of get the impression that they're separate, even though they're in the same region. They're just a different perspective. Now, they were brought up, Western educated. A lot of these people, they're more a secular society, certainly in previous years. I don't know how they are now. But how is it that they are able to operate on the international oil market, and what happens with the revenue that they get? And what was part of the deal with Saudi Arabia and different with Iran? Because when the Ayatollah took over Iran, they seized all their assets, and they go, oh, I'm sorry, all this money, the dollars that we said you had to trade, and you had to put it in Western-controlled banks. Guess what? You don't have access to it anymore. You think they forgot that? I mean, how did that shake out?
Well, how did Iran get its money back? What's the real question?
Well, did they get their money back? Did they learn their lesson as the rest of the Middle East? Learning from Iran's example that if you get tied with the West too much and it's time to, I break with thee, do they have all your money tied up?
Well, no. In fact, the Iranians had a lot of our money tied up. So the company I worked for, a Boston-based company, we lost millions of dollars in Iran that Iran owed us, never paid. And that happened to a lot of U.S. corporations.
Turnabout. Well, we'll talk about some of the details on that, because I think it plays in to now. What happens when the House of Saud starts to fall? We'll find out when we come back in just a little bit.